Good morning, everyone. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals public review session for May 1st, 2018. We'll begin with the special order calendar, decision items, item number 1, 2016-4255BZ, 4801 Ocean Avenue, Brooklyn.
And this one we have to defer. We're still waiting for ZRD1, CCD1.
Continued hearings, item number 2, 101-92BZ, 66-98 East Burnside Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay. Copies of the month-to-month leases for parking spaces were provided. The last one is dated 2013, so I'd like to understand how that establishes continuous use since the 2013 variance expiration date. Also, those leases, I'm trying to figure out like what the background is on why 11 spaces were the restricted open to outsiders. So there are 11 leases, but those leases are for spaces that are scattered around on the lot, only 5 of which fall within the R8 district that's really the subject of the variance. So it's not clear whether those are accessory spaces for tenants or outside residents, the ones that are the leased ones. We don't really know what those leases are for. And because I'm wondering, it's a strange coincidence that there are 11 spaces in the R8 and there are 11 prohibited, there are 11 uses that are permitted to be for outsiders. And I'm wondering if maybe that's how the board came up with the number 11. Because we were talking about the restaurant for accessory use to the businesses. I don't know, but there should be more work on the part of the applicant to figure this out. The photos show the barbed wire removed as requested. The plans show lighting levels at the perimeter at 0.2 to 0.5 foot candles, which is very low, close to 0. The plans also were provided that show existing landscaping, but we actually asked that the buffering on the Morris Avenue frontage be physically improved because the trees are in really a scraggly state. They really need an arborist to come in and cut the trees, improve the trees. I don't mean cut them down, but take care of them. And then there was supposed to be dense buffer of arbor vitae, which it shows on the drawings, but they don't look like they exist in real life. So I'm not sure if the proposal is to install them or, because they're described on the drawings as existing.
You mean that the spot on the opposite street where the trees are?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that looks sparse and it looks unkempt.
Right, exactly.
So I think that they need to have some kind of landscaping plan there. They
Yeah.
need somebody to get in there and, get
And
the
work
rocks
it
and
out.
stones out.
Right.
Put some nice plantings on it, that kind of
Exactly.
thing.
They're treating it like an abandoned lot instead of like a landscape area. Also, the fencing on the, we talked about this the last time, that the fencing is in bad shape, especially on the side lot. So I think they're going to need to do some replacement of the fencing. Anybody else on that?
I agree exactly what you said about the continuity of use. Those leases don't prove anything, and they need to prove continuity since 2013. I believe that's when it lapsed.
Yes, correct, yeah. I mean,
Oh, and the parking utilization study. Did you see
oh,
that?
I didn't see it. They said they were providing one and I didn't see one.
Yeah, they conducted it on March 2018, and they took a look at morning availability and also midday availability. So early morning availability, morning around 8:30, and then midday around 11:30. And they noted that while they had 95 spaces available out of 672 in the early morning, it went up to actually 130 out of 651 at 8:30, and then down at 11:30 to 53 out of 651 spaces available. And they concluded from that the decrease showed that the net additional cars into the area were for commercial reasons, and yet there was still availability on the street. So that was to justify what they had said originally, that they felt that although it wasn't required that the spots in the lot be set aside for commercial uses, there were enough spaces on the street in the area to absorb any commercial demand.
But that's if we eliminated that if none of these spaces were accessory, right?
Right.
So now you'd have 25 spaces that would be open for transient use, or let's say outsider.
Neighborhood.
Yeah, right. So that means you're putting, so if there were 53 spaces available at the time of the study, and you're removing another 14 spaces from that, basically, for on-street parking, you're reducing that to 40 spaces, 39 spaces, and doesn't allow for any movement.
Right, but what to me would help flesh this story out for me would be just a discussion of the type of retail uses that actually are in that building, because if they're not destination retail, and it's just really small little stores that support the neighborhood's residents,
Right.
then I could understand that you wouldn't really have to worry as much about whether or not you're setting aside parking in that lot for the customers, because most people probably won't.
Right.
So it would be helpful to see what's actually.
So it's customer and employee parking, though? That's the question, right?
Right.
But my other question is, the variance was only for those 11 spaces in the R8. So the side that's in the C2 or whatever it is, C1, that just needs to comply with zoning,
True.
right? So if zoning allows those spaces to be non-accessory, because otherwise, I think it's an additional waiver.
Right, then do we even have to address it?
Right, I think we don't,
Yeah,
if it's
then we
whatever
just
is
could
allowed
say
in the
that-
C1.
Right, and then the grant would just be applying only to the R portion.
Right.
Talk about
I
the
think that
11
would be
spots
clear.
allowed in the R, and then we bypass the rest of the
Right.
conversation completely.
Right. Okay, I think that's the cleanest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
okay.
Item number 3, 75-95BZ, 1635 Third Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, the open issue is the installation of the fire alarm system in an existing building with this existing PCE. We understand there is an existing sprinkler system. The fire department on April 28th sent the following letter, sent a letter suggesting the board grant a conditional approval with 1 year to complete the fire alarm installation. I would like for tomorrow the fire department to discuss with us this whole idea of a conditional approval, because what's happened in the past is we have a condition, it's not enforced, and then a decade or two passes, and then there's still no fire alarm. So if fire department thinks that they can be sort of the enforcers, otherwise we just don't decide on it until we see the fire alarm installed, if a fire alarm is a critical function in this location. There's also, just to note for our resolution, that there's a requirement by fire department that the public assembly permit needs to be amended to show 428 persons. You taking notes on your phone now?
Yeah, because my computer is updating, so.
Oh, great, okay. That's impressive.
You do what you gotta do.
Okay, item number 4, 168-98BZ, 3050 Bailey Avenue, the Bronx.
Plans show existing conditions and light levels were provided. Photos showing fencing, landscaping, and striping in place were also provided. I think the site looks much improved. And I think, therefore, we've gotten there. Do you think there's more to do on the site?
I might have missed the photo about the plantings that are supposed to be on the side lot lines, on the interior of the side lot lines along the residences.
Uh-huh.
Weren't we
Right, we
that?
did,
'Cause I
yeah.
didn't see that.
Okay, so
It
maybe I
could be
missed.
that they just left those photos out.
Okay.
Item number 5, 97-07BZ, 8016 Cooper Avenue, Queens.
Okay, we have affidavits from the fire alarm and sprinkler installer inspectors indicating that both systems are operating, and fire department submitted a letter of no objection dated April 19th with comments that should be included in the resolution, which is with respect to that they must amend their public assembly permit for 538 persons.
Item number, new cases. Item number 6, 677-53BZ, 6128 Fresh Meadow Lane, Queens.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and notice of hearing to officials. Community Board 8 voted to approve on condition with 23 in favor and 12 opposed, so that's a pretty mixed vote. The Community Board provided us with their detailed minutes that describe parking on the sidewalk, and in particular, parking of tow trucks and vehicles awaiting service on city streets, and concerned about that. Apparently, that's been going on for a long time. They recommended a renewal of the variance for only 5 years, and then that they would be monitoring it themselves with a biannual report from the property owner about the situation with the parking. So to follow up on the Community Board's concerns, I'd like the owner to address those issues, how they're going to be attending to it. They need to provide us with the approved 2011 plans, because they only provided the 1997 plans, so that's not the latest approval. The C of O that they provided was for some other site, and I couldn't find anything online. I mean, nothing recent online. According to what I found, the last C of O is 1964, and it expired in 1969 with the expiration of the variance back then. And there doesn't seem to be any impediments to obtaining a C of O. The only outstanding violation, which sometimes gets in the way of getting a C of O, is a 2008 violation for failure to obtain a C of O. So they've been renewed consistently throughout. Why has there been no C of O? So I would like to say they seem to have no interest in getting a C of O, and we should see paperwork filed that brings it all the way to the point that the only thing missing is our extension. And then there's a December 9th, 2016, existing proposed plans that show a woven wire fence separating this lot from lot 52, which was a condition in the first grant way back in the, whenever that was, in the 50s or something. That was apparently never installed. The March 15, 18 plans show no fence, and then when, of course, you see the site, it's working in concert with Lot 52, so I'm not really sure what's up with that. And Lot 52 has a C of O. Do you remember this case?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
Lot 52 actually has the C of O for water repair.
Right.
But it's funny because when we heard this case previously in 2011, they were very clear to us that the sites were not operating in conjunction with each other as regards water repair, but that Lot 52 is like an intake and payment center where you would drop your car off and you would sign your necessary papers, and then you would come back for your car when it's fixed, and you would make your payment and everything like that, and then you would go get your car. However, when you go to the site now, because I did visit the site, as you said, there is no fence, and there are cars clearly crossing between both sites, and there is auto repair on the Lot 52 site as well, which is legal as per the CFO, so I don't know why they're not mentioning it.
Right, well,
So-
you know, and then you wonder, like, how in the world did they get a C of O for this? But I guess that's DOB's problem.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so I don't know if there's, because this is a pre-61 variance, they can't enlarge the zoning lot, but I don't know, and they don't need a variance from us because it's an as-of-right use, so, you know, all we have to mention is, I guess, that they travel from one side to the other, and that's that, right? I don't really understand why this has been sneaking around.
Right.
Because
I think it's
the drawings that were submitted in 2016 pretend that the fence is there when it's never been there.
So I think it has to do with if the fence is there, it's a lot easier to manage the vehicles, parking, et cetera, and not, and to separate the two uses. And why the community board's upset is because there's overflow of cars, et cetera. And I think that's why they put the fence there. I think that if we have some clarity, we can actually create a plan that would please the community board with the use of these lots in conjunction with each
But
other.
you couldn't use it at all with a fence.
Right.
There's no way
Right.
for the car to turn into the, no, but not just frustrating the access from one repair to the other repair, but if you were to use the curb cut that exists right next to that, there's actually, I don't think, enough turning radius for the
Oh.
cars to get out of the side opening and come down their own curb cut. So it would be kind of crazy. So more, and not only that, it would create more activities on the street.
street, yeah.
So now the business would move to the street instead of staying on the lot, which is already a problem because apparently the tow trucks are parking on the street and cars awaiting service are parking overnight because they get dropped off. I didn't really understand that. Seems to me if you're receiving cars at night, you have to have somebody to receive the cars at night. That's part of your business.
Yeah.
You can't just tow to the city street and then leave it there like that's an extension of your business. So,
Oh, also, it seems that they now have Saturday hours, so they should file for an amendment in time.
all right.
Item number
Wait,
7.
one second. One
No?
second.
Okay.
Where did you see they had Saturday hours?
Huh?
It's an additional filing.
For what?
For an
For an
amendment.
amendment.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, there is sort of, is there an amendment? No. In terms of explaining clearly the relationship with the adjacent site, that's just explaining that and getting that into the record,
But
right?
Commissioner Otley Brown said they're, one of the conditions is their hours, and they've changed
Yeah.
their hours, so they need to amend their
Yeah, I'm
variance.
not saying that, I'm just saying, do the other criteria fall into an amendment as well?
No.
Just to say, we're working in tandem with that other site
They're not
and we
asking for
cross
additional
over?
relief, because that, as you said,
No.
it's as of right. Yeah, it's just cleaning up the plans to actually reflect how they're using the site.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Ready?
Okay. Item number 7, 233-07BZ, 203 East 86th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community board recommends approval, and we have a copy of the fire department approval form of the fire alarm and sprinkler sign-off and letters of completion from DOB. I don't know if fire department wants to look further into this because they have those documents. Okay. Anything else?
I just had a question. Their hours are actually listed in the resolution and not in this paperwork. So are
Oh.
the hours the same as they are in the resolution?
Okay.
Okay. Appeals calendar, item number 8, continued hearings, 2016-4253A, 565 St. John's Place, Brooklyn.
Okay, so nothing was submitted on this since, is there some, okay, since October 2017, and this would be the 5th adjournment, and a year since the last hearing. We said at the last hearing that this was the last adjournment, or we would dismiss. And at the last hearing, the applicant actually came and said he needed one more adjournment to get it right. So, and we repeated at that hearing that it was the last chance. So I think it's the last chance. We did say we'd send a certified letter to the owner, which I don't think ended up happening, but the applicant was here and we said last chance. So,
Tony told me that they should show up.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
they should show up, but, you know, what's going on? And, you know, it's a very odd case, right? Looking for a vesting of an application of a building that doesn't look anything like the plans. So how does that work? Okay.
Item number 9, 2016-4296 through 4298A, 3236, 3238 Schley Avenue, and 580 Clarence Avenue, the Bronx.
They requested an adjournment.
Item number 10, 2017-143A, 25-32 44th Street, Queens.
Okay, nothing was submitted on this, but this is that kind of common application with another one where it's going to become a variance. Nothing was submitted, but the applicant is intending to return this to its legal use. So I'm not, and I looked up on the BIZ, on DOB's website, and it shows that as of April 25th, the alteration type 1 just needs to be signed off. So I don't understand why this application can't be withdrawn. Why is it lingering here?
New cases, item number 11, 2017-232A, 1632 Richmond Terrace, Staten Island.
Hold on, just one second. Can you maybe reach out to DOB?
Yeah, yeah,
Stuff?
yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Richmond Terrace. We have proof of notice of hearing to officials, but I actually didn't find in the folder proof of submission of initial application to officials. But meanwhile, we have a community board recommendation, so they must have gotten it. They recommended approval with 3 opposed. I didn't see input on this from the Borough President's office, who usually does comment on these applications, other than them providing mapping information. This is a self-storage facility, and I'm curious about how it's operating. So you've got wider Richmond Road, but they're not using that as the access point for all of the vans and everything. It's self-storage. That means lots of traffic by people who are storing their stuff there. And it depends on which kind of self-storage. Some of them do deliveries, right? And they're all coming and going by Tompkins Court and Tompkins Lane, which is either 20 feet or 10 feet wide. And it passes on one part in front of houses. So I just was wondering, like, why is that happening? And why can't it go from Richmond Terrace instead, which is a commercial district?
You know, my only thought on that issue, having gone to the site, is this area of Richmond Terrace is kind of got a very curvy road on which cars drive fairly quickly, which makes it very difficult to just pull out into traffic, especially when you're exiting, you're making a left turn. And I'm wondering if they're thinking it would just be much easier for traffic to go in and out if it's approaching and exiting from the side street, instead of a driveway that's directly onto that, requiring a slightly sharper turn, perhaps. I really, that's the only thing I can think of, because those 2 side streets those are narrow side streets.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right about that, you know. But it was kind of difficult getting in and getting out, you know,
okay.
Especially I'm like looking both ways like a dozen times and then like zooming out and making a left. So,
But maybe that's part of site planning, or they create some sort of merge zone or
it'd
their
be great
own.
if it was a signal.
Yeah, or they get a signal, or even though it's
So-
not. It's a CCO street, so then I always get confused about what is it that DOT would do in terms of signalization.
Because I pulled in a couple of side streets away to make a U-turn, and I'm wondering if there was definitely no signal on those streets. I want to look.
And then, so I'm wondering in terms of this, whether DOT might opine on this with respect to safety and so on. So can you give that note to Tony? To reach out to DOT about this and whether they'd have an opinion about all of that commercial traffic, which could be, anyway, panel trucks. I don't know about tractor trailers, but large trucks on that tiny little, not even real roadways. We do have a DEP sewer sign-off, and we have fire department conditional sign-off that included a marked-up site plan. So the BSA plan has to conform to the marked-up fire department site plan, so we're all on the same page. I mean, just looking at the Google image from Google satellite image, where whatever the existing use is, there's a big kind of wide splay curb cut, and they had large trucks going from that site. So they managed it somehow. I mean, presumably, or the other businesses manage it. I don't know. It just seems mean to me.
With the new
Move all that.
construction, are they moving closer? They're making it bigger. I'm wondering if the new construction would allow for that entrance onto Richmond.
Well, but that's a design choice,
Right.
right? The design choice is, look at how well it works if we leave from Tompkins. But at what expense, right? You know, you could say, it looks like Van Street is also a commercial zone. So, you know, if there were a way to exit and enter only from Tompkins Court, which is this really little one, which is maybe more like a driveway, maybe that would work, but it is passing by a couple of houses there, so it's a little drag.
Do we have a firm on that? Do we need it?
No,
I didn't see a firm.
but actually, they didn't provide the firm, but I believe Richmond Terrace is it's elevated, hence the name Terrace.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 12, 2017-276A, 96 Industrial Loop, Staten Island.
Okay, we have proof of submission of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommended approval. We have a declaration of maintenance of the roadway that was recorded in 1995, and it refers to a declaration of easement, which we need a copy of. I was looking at the sidewalk condition here. They're proposing to build their building right up against their property line, and there are sidewalks actually here on the adjacent property and kind of spottily along Industrial Loop. They need to have a sidewalk as well that picks up this continuity or in anticipation of continuity. So it means either, but for some reason, there's 12 feet behind the building, they could move the building back. They should provide a survey, and because it's very unclear where the curbs are, it's really hard to understand that drawing in terms of where the property line is, so a survey would clarify that. We have a DEP March 26 comment letter that had many open issues that need to be resolved. There was a April 17th submission and response, so I guess DEP is reviewing that. And anybody, any other comments? Did you want to say something?
Currently, we're still waiting for DOT, Staten Island Borough President, and FDNY sign off.
Okay. Anything else on that? No?
Continued hearings, item number 13, 56-02BZ, 317 Day Hill Road, Brooklyn, and item number 14, 1-96BZ, 600 McDonald Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, so the only real, so there was a fire department inspection of the site, and fire department issued violations and criminal summons, and recommended that we deny the application because of the illegal use. Well, this isn't really an application, just to clarify for fire department, this is a compliance hearing, and the board has repeatedly stated that the building is out of compliance with the terms of the initial grant and the zoning resolution, and the owners are pursuing a rezoning through the ULURP process to permit this use in the district, but obviously at no time is it permissible that the use be a danger to human life. And BSA has no enforcement mechanism and relies on fire department and DOB to shut down the illegal operations, so waiting with bated breath. A parking study, and then I think it was just Friday, the owners submitted a response to the fire department's violations and showed photographs that they had cured for the most part, right?
and
Was that
Tom-
this morning or Friday? I don't-
Tony told me FDNY will re-inspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they need to, because it's just photographs that show a door held open by a chair and says, now the door works. A parking study was finally provided. It concludes, of course, that there's no significant difference in on-street parking demand between a no-event night and an event night, and that utilization rates meet or exceed legal capacity, so that there are double-parked cars during certain times on Day Hill Road. No backup materials were provided. You can't give us a study without backup materials. We need to see all the counts, the dates, all that. No information was provided about the type of event that was held that night or the operation of the valet service at the site. And I'd like to know whether the banquet hall management was told in advance that these would be the study dates, because I could predict that they might inform their attendees to use public transportation. So, I'd like more information on that. Anybody else on that? Okay.
Item number 15, 174-14BZ, 820 East 182nd Street, AKA 2165 to 75 Southern Boulevard, the Bronx.
So, we've been trying to get these drawings into shape, and I'm just wondering whether the architect met with staff.
Yes.
Did, okay. Well,
I gave him examples of the plans, widespread plans, and some landscaping things and photographs of what a trash enclosure looks like. They're a huge improvement.
yeah, definitely made an improvement. Just curious about, like, communication skills on the part of this particular consultant. So the site plan doesn't show the, like, location of the signage. It just says there are X number of signs. It doesn't tell us where. We can kind of figure that out from the elevations, but it's supposed to show it also on the plans. The signage calculation sheet was done all on one page, but there are two frontages, so you have to do one for each frontage. They combined also the total. That's not how it worked. It's one allowance per frontage, so 50 square feet on each frontage for maximum illuminated signage. How DOB interprets it when it's on the corner is a question. They probably do let you combine it, but I'm not sure. So they need two separate zoning calculations sheets for the signs, and they need to calculate each sign on its own frontage. And it seems still to me that photos show many more signs than are accounted for in the calculation sheet. Maybe I'm wrong, then they need to explain it. The photographs they've provided were very hard to read in PDF form. The site plan, line weights, I don't understand this communication technique of this particular architect. Line weights are how you communicate when you have a building versus a shrub versus paving versus striping you have to have a hierarchy of line weights or it's impossible to know where's the building. So they need to learn line weight hierarchy. I don't understand this. It's the most basic, 101 stuff. Landscaping is being shown in potted plants that sit in a planter box that's adorable, which they already bought. When we told them first we wanted to see details. I don't understand why our communications are not getting in. So we'd asked the applicant to consult the landscaper and about providing a 3-foot wide planter with 6-foot high dense shrubs and to submit the details in advance of installation. And instead they built this little box and they put a few
That are gonna last about a month.
a month. And they're plants in pots. And it only extends for a little piece of the area. It was supposed to go along the entire distance of that shared property line. And I'm really not understanding this. And I'm at the point on this one, because we've been here for so long, that the owner needs to come. Because the owner seems not to understand that they're not being, let's say, that their application isn't, let's say, progressing, thank you. A light spread diagram that is very difficult to read in the PDF form was also submitted. It's really hard to see, and there's this black bar that's covering over the portion that's most critical adjacent to the residential properties that may be showing that light levels adjacent to their property are too high.
I think with that, because there was lights installed on the residential building itself, so they couldn't get a zero measurement reading because that light is shining. And that was addressed at the last one. So I told the applicant to put the light reading as it is and then have explain why that can't get to zero.
Didn't do that. Just gave us, with no cover letter or anything. That's the other thing. Everything was submitted just like here.
And it's interesting because if you do look at that side, it actually fades. The light seems to be fading out, which I was thinking to myself, well, it can't because you have that light on the apartment building. And then I was like, well, maybe they deducted for it. Because
right.
it actually, of course, like you said, they don't tell you anything. So you're sitting there trying to figure this out because you can see that on the Pump Island area, the lights are really bright. And then it starts fading out as you get to that apartment building, which can't possibly be true in real life because
Right.
you've got that big floodlight that's on the apartment building. So that's why I was thinking to myself, maybe they just figured out what portion of the light goes to that apartment building and subtracted it from the readings. But as you said, they should be explaining that.
Right. And they need to install light shields wherever. It's actually very bright on the sidewalk. I don't know if that's okay. There's parts where it's on the, we talked about how lighting the sidewalk's not a bad thing, but I'm not sure how bright it is or if there really needs to be some light shields installed. Part of the problem is because the application isn't really being guided by the applicant, and they just give us stuff, and then we have to give them one more little step. There needs to be somebody in charge of this application. And all I can think of is it needs to be the owner. So the owner has to come tomorrow. We do have fire department sign off. Okay. Just one second.
Item number 1617-15BZ, 133 Beach, 5th Street, Queens.
The last hearing was adjourned for failure to make a complete submission. A revised statement of facts and financials were submitted on April 13th. We have a March 22nd letter from Assemblymember Amato opposing the application. The letter states that this application seeks a vesting of the zoning. Just to clarify for the record, this is not an application to vest under the prior R5 zoning. This is an application for a variance that must establish that there exists on the site a unique physical condition that so burdens the land that a reasonable return on investment cannot be realized absent a waiver of the zoning resolution. There's also a February 5th letter from opposing counsel recommending the board visit the site. I just want to, again, for the record, inform that council that 3 board members, as far as I know, have visited the site. There's also a letter from applicant's counsel concerning the community board meeting and suggesting that their recommendation not be considered since not timely. The board wants to hear from the community board and other interested members of the community, so will not strike the community board's recommendation on the record, no matter when it was submitted. Statement of facts continues to ignore the development adjacent to this site and that it was built without variances, or the fact of that waterfront house that was built on Beach 4th Street, although they say that there weren't flood regulations the same way since 2012 on that Beach 4th Street house, but flood regulations changed after Sandy, but they've been in existence since the 80s. and you still had to follow the building code and lift the house according to whatever the firm map said at the time. So you still had all the same regulations, it's just different heights, right? Or not, let's say, enough regulations so it's costly to build in a flood zone.
Structural design was more or less the same. Structural design requirements were more or less the same. I believe that the significant change was the elevation for the first floor, where can you put the finished floor of the first floor or the lowest floor
Right.
at. So that was like the really significant change after Sandy.
Right, because you still had to not occupy the first floor with residential uses, the below
Yeah.
floodplain level,
Yeah.
that was still the case. So, yeah. Okay. And then the buildings department application
Beach Street,
details
right?
for the April 12th, 16 application for Beach 4th Street show that the site was listed as being in a flood hazard area, just to clarify. So in '06, not 16. Sorry, '06, I was wondering why I didn't have 2 digits. So in 2006, that Beach 4th Street project was shown on their drawings as being in a flood hazard area. I indicate that because the firm map contours have changed, and, you know, might they have changed since, and that development was not in a flood zone? No, it was in a flood zone. It says so on their application materials in 2006. So just to clarify, a down zoning, which is what they seem to be complaining here about, can render a site unbuildable where it imposes setbacks or minimum lot sizes that cannot be complied with, but not simply by reducing the FAR. And a use change rarely renders a lot unbuildable unless the only possible use on the site is the thing that is now disallowed, right? The February 12th letter from the applicant's counsel to opposition counsel all but admits that the reason for this variance is the fact of the downzoning. Downzoning can't be an A finding. According to the statement of facts, the building code only began imposing restrictions on areas subject to liquefaction in the 1990s. So according to that, any sites built since the 1990s along the waterfront should be included in the uniqueness study. So all the developments in that area were subject to liquefaction and code. So instead of looking at only vacant sites or sites built since the rezoning, they should be looking at sites built since the 90s, of which there are many. So I think that cuts into their limited amount of comparable sites. The statement of facts states that but for the DEC wetland area and the 30-foot buffer zone, an additional 5 two-family homes could be built on the site as of right. The as of right, though, has a .52 FAR with 5 two-family homes. The maximum FAR is .75. So how could the 2.23 FAR that's remaining accommodate 5 more homes? It doesn't make any sense. So I didn't know.
Don't you get the added bonus, giving you up to .90 as well?
That I don't know.
Must have
Okay.
been a predominant bill.
That I don't know,
Yeah,
okay. It's in a predominantly built-up area, therefore
I think the
adequate.
bonus applies, but you have to be in a
Oh,
predominantly
I
built.
thought it was anything under sloping roof to get the extra
Oh, it should have been
.20.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's in an R4?
Yeah, I thought it's an additional 20% under a sloping roof, bringing you to .90.
I might be applying it to lower density, R3.
Yeah, okay, so
Yeah,
it's a good
yeah.
question, so they should look into that. At the last hearing, we asked that the proposal be modified to be more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, namely attached two-family houses. This wasn't done. The January 17th cover letter suggests that doing so wouldn't be cost-effective since every unit in the row house would have to be accessible, but we don't have any drawings at all to test this theory. My review of the building code does not come to the conclusion that every building has to be accessible. For R3 is the occupancy class for these building types, so 1 and 2 family homes. For R3, 1 to 2 family semi-detached homes, Section 1107.7 of the building code specifically requires type B accessible units where there are 4 or more dwelling units in a single structure. So for example, and actually there's even a buildings department sort of guidebook on how to build 1 and 2 family homes that actually explains that to you. So, and so according to that, you could do a semi-detached home where one side has 1 unit and the other side has 2, for example. But there's also more. It says Building Code 1107.7.2 allows for multi-story dwelling units that are not equipped with an elevator to not be an accessible unit. So it seems to me that if they wanted to make this argument that they would have to install elevators in these buildings, they need to go to the Department of Buildings with these drawings and get a CCD1. The other thing is to say that these are not viable. But however, there's also this concept of a lula, which is a lift that's just to access the accessible unit on the first floor, which are inexpensive wheelchair lifts that just go to that first level unit. And we actually have another project, interestingly, here, where they didn't cost out that elevator, but it's in that design. So it's a classic example of just having this one-stop elevator. It's not really an elevator, it's really a lift. We had also asked that the statement of facts address the question of self-created hardship and the history of the lot mergers, since only one of the lots in the merger is subject to wetlands and waterfront yard regulations. This wasn't done, wasn't mentioned, nothing. Opposition counsel states that there is a parking problem in the area. For a parking waiver, there has to be empirical support for the claim that on-site parking is available. They're saying everyone can take the bus. This place is in the middle of nowhere. And the statement of facts continues to be light on rationale in general, and I didn't find drawings for the as-of-right version, so I'd like to know how the cost estimates were prepared without them. That's an interesting trick. Those were my comments.
So I agree with you on all of your comments, basically, and I'll just also add some more. I was surprised that they just gave my suggestion to have the attached townhome scenario such short shrift. They really didn't go into detail. They really needed to have plans, complete plans, and they needed to cost it out to support their statement. You can't just send something to the board in response that we thought about it, can't do it, sorry, and then move on. And then in addition to that, if it turns out after they give a full analysis of what we asked for, it doesn't work, they should also be considering other scenarios that are lesser scenarios. For instance, a 3-story building with only 18 apartments and 18 parking spaces. So at least they would eliminate the need for the parking waiver. And also the degree of the unit number waiver would be a lower degree of waiver for that as well. Then when I looked at the plans of the proposed, even I was wondering why they're not trying to maximize income, for instance, by having the setbacks on the 3rd and 4th floor terraces, but there's no access to them, so I couldn't even understand that. As to the financials, I have a number of financial comments, and I'll just read them off the page because they're very easy, and if I just read it. For instance, for the site value, comp number 3 appears to have some sort of structure on it according to the Google Maps Street View of 2013, although the Department of Finance does have it as residentially zoned vacant land, but if they can clear that up, that would be very helpful. Also, it should have, I believe, a maximum .90 floor area, and they're actually listing the floor area as 15,758 square feet, which is actually more than you could have on this site. You might raise the unadjusted price per maximum FAR. As for the 2-family home sales, how come there's no upward adjustment for condition? None of the comparable homes are brand new. They're all at least 4 years old. Why are you using $320 a square foot as your average to value the subject homes? The actual grid, if you completely fill it out to show the average price, per square foot, it would come out to $339 a square foot if you average the total area of all 5 homes and divide it into the average sales price. And it would come out to $346 a square foot if you divide each sale by the home square footage and then add all those prices per square foot and divide those by 5. And yet they're still using $320 a square foot, which is smaller. Also, if you look, the most recent sale that occurred in December 2017 actually has a sales price per square foot at the highest of $405 a square foot. So it seems to me that the $320 a square foot is low for a variety of reasons. Now, sale number 1 is actually most like the subject. However, it's the oldest sale at August 2016, and it's also the lowest, so I'm not sure how much that could even inform us. Now, when you actually look at the prices that are assumed for lots 1 through 5 as the 2-family homes, lots 2 and 5 should actually have a premium because those are the 2 waterfront lots. Right now, they're the highest prices, but simply because they're the largest buildings. So they need to actually add more for the premium for waterfront on top of it. For the condo sales, why are 4 of the comparables actually 2-bedroom apartments and only 1 of the comparables is a 3-bedroom apartment when the building actually has 23 bedroom apartments, 1 1-bedroom and 2 2-bedroom apartments? Also, the comparables seem to be much smaller than the subject, and they only have a 10% coverage adjustment for size. These apartments seem to be in the neighborhood of 1,500 square feet each, and I think that what's being done with the comparables is actually undercutting the actual price that we would see for these. We need to see larger comparables to actually validate the assumptions used. And then the parking spaces are valued at $10,000 each. However, there are no comparables for these at all, so I don't really know what it's based on. As for the construction costs, I'm deferring to Commissioner Shetta.
Thank you. So bear with me. I did ask during the last hearing, I did ask for some information to be provided, and I almost got nothing. So we did ask for a full geotechnical report that satisfy the requirements of the building code. However, we didn't get too much on top of what we got last time, which was 2 borings and a letter report. During the last hearing, we suggested that the applicant look into some solutions to improve the ground and put the building, the smaller building, the as-of-right one, on shallow foundations instead of going with the pile foundations. And I got an advice from the geotechnical engineer. He's saying that it is not code compliant to use shallow foundations on this side. I thank him so much for that, but I need explanations. I did read in the 2014 New York City Building Code a statement saying that this specific site cannot be founded on a shallow foundation. And if the geotechnical engineer actually cares about the requirement of the building code that much, I would suggest him, and I actually did ask him during the last hearing, to provide us with 2 borings or whatever number of borings that are code compliant. The borings that we got so far are not code compliant. Very, very simply because the code, if you want to use shallow foundations, you put these footings, you put them at the grade. So all what the code asks for is you put 2 or 3 or whatever number of borings that the code requires, and you extend these borings deep enough to include the zone that will be stressed of the ground, which is about four times the width of the footing. If the footing is 4 feet wide or 5 feet wide, usually 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 feet max, deep boring will do it, which is we have right now. We have 2 borings, each of them is 52 feet. But the suggested foundation system here is not shallow foundation, it's deep foundation, and it's piles, extending 100 feet deep. So if you want to use borings to design the piles for this development, these borings should extend by the code. The code requires this, and I don't recall that. Actually, it's section 1802.4.1, item number 4. It says that the borings should extend enough to a specific depths to give you enough information to design your foundation system. This is not satisfied here. We did ask for detailed liquefaction analysis, because so far I didn't see any information with the last submission that prove it to me that this site has a liquefiable sand material, except for the low blow counts, the SPT numbers that are low from the 2 borings that were performed. However, the liquefaction analysis that came, I wouldn't call it even analysis. There is a chart in the building code that says take these blow counts, put them in this chart. And this chart is like a very initial, very crude screening, and it gives you an idea whether you possibly will have liquefaction issue or not. And if you believe that you have to do an analysis. And this analysis cannot be done based on borings that are extending just 50 feet below grade. The boring should extend minimum 100 feet per the code, which I believe is needed on this side. So the liquefaction analysis practically is not provided. Then we'll talk about the uniqueness. This site, per the applicant, has 2 main issues. The first one is the liquefiable sand, and the second one is what they call it, the organics, or the 20-foot clay, which is a very soft material that cannot take much stresses, and usually it experiences compression, so it causes building setup. This site has both, and in every, I would say typically, in all the coastal areas that I did work at, I did encounter this organic clay condition in addition to the low blow counts in the sandy material, if encountered. I encountered this in Long Island, Oceanside. I encountered this in Coney Island at too many places. I encountered this in Staten Island, many other sites in New Jersey. Every single site close to the beach where we encounter this organic clay or this clay material. Above the clay, the sand is like got sedimented over time, and the blow counts are not that great, so it's liquefiable by nature. And they are claiming hardship based on their theory is it's not just the clay. They said this in the latest letter they provided. They said, yes, we understand that the clay is typical, that weak clay is typical. And we at coastal areas, of course, and we understand that at coastal areas, this low blow count liquefiable sand could be typical too. But which is not typical or unique is the combination of both. I have 2 responses to this. Number 1 is I have encountered both at many sites, I would say typically. And the second thing, if you have one of them, it's enough to go with piles. In other words, let's say we will buy the argument that this site has some sort of uniqueness. And the way we grant the variance is we have the applicant go with something called typical site, which if they are claiming hardship because of rock, we would say, okay, eliminate the rock and do a site without the rock, and then do it with the rock, and then give me a comparison. And the difference between both, we weigh this, and this is the amount of variance that we need to give them in a floor area or any other requirement. But for this site, if you have just liquefiable sand, you're going with piles. If you have just clay, you're going with piles. If you have both, according to your argument, if you have both, you will go with piles. So if I say, okay, pick one, this is your uniqueness, eliminate it, study your site, you have piles. Okay, now combine the 2 and study the site, you have piles, so there is no difference. That's what I was trying to understand during the past week, but I don't know why they are still insisting on the argument that this site is unique. The other thing that we did ask for is the design for the pile. We did ask for single pile design. I didn't get that. I wanna know, this is a timber pile. I wanna know how this pile will be taken to load. They are talking about down drag, they are talking about, this pile will need to extend 100 feet deep. Although the borings they did are just 50 feet or 52 feet deep. So how about that between 52 and 100? Is this a weak material? Is this much better material? Do you need to really extend this pile to 100 feet? I don't know, because I don't have drilling results beyond 52 feet. So we need to get that. Like I said, the 20-foot clay, organic clay, the geotechnical engineer provided us with maps for the entire area. And these maps show this 20-foot clay layers all over the place. Even that site, that specific site, is not in the middle of this area. It's kind of like at the edge. So I'm not sure if this 20-foot clay material really extends to, is it really 20 feet there? Is it more? Is it less? Again, we can't tell. The pile configuration, like I said, it's timber pile, it's 100 feet deep, it's 30-ton capacity, and the price for the pile is very comparable to a steel pipe pile. The unit price, this pile was priced at $60,000 per pile, which means that each foot, $6,000, $6,000 each, which means that each linear foot is $60. $60 is very comparable to the unit price per foot for a steel pipe. The difference between the steel pipe and the timber pile is the timber pile can just give you 30-ton capacity. The steel pipe can give 75-ton capacity. So it's like 2.5 capacity, which means you have 40% pile count. If you have 100 pile timber, with that steel pile, you could reduce the 100 to just 40. I'm not sure why this wasn't discussed. The unit price for that pile previously was used at $5,000 per pile, and then increased to $6,000. Although the pile configuration was the same, it was 100 feet deep, 30-ton capacity, nothing changed. So I need explanation for that. For the cost estimate, and we've posted a notice on Friday, I guess,
Yes.
regarding requirements for cost estimates, and I'm like appealing to all the applicants, please, when you provide a cost estimate, look at the requirements and go with them, because if you submit a cost estimate that's not satisfying these requirements, enough is enough. I'm not gonna do your work. I'm not gonna do your job. I'm not gonna run the numbers for you trying to save the day. Please give me the details I need to easy follow what you're doing. For this specific cost estimate, like usual, like every typical cost estimate before, no details, just quantity. Where they are coming from, I have no idea. For example, for the azophyte, which we didn't, by the way, we didn't receive any drawings, detailed drawings for the azophytes. They are giving us 116 piles. Where? How? You got them. I have no idea. So it's just 116. Trust us, take it. No, I'm not gonna trust you. I'm not gonna take it for granted. So please give me details on that. Same thing for the proposed. We need details for all the quantities that was submitted previously. With regard to the unit prices, I have looked at the latest construction cost estimate, and I in the beginning, honestly, I was looking at the pile price, and it was 5,000, like I said, and then jacked up to 6,000, 20% up. And I looked at the pile specifications, same depth, same capacity, same pile type. And I said, okay, let me take a look at like one more item. And I did look at like 10 items, and the cost, the unit prices are jacked up from 15% to 30%. Why? That construction cost estimate was dated January 17, 2017, and now we're in 2018. Whoever prepared this construction cost estimate believe that prices increased 15 to 30% since then? I don't think so. And if you believe the opposite, give me an evidence. So I want to know why these prices were increased like that, because I have seen this in too many construction cost estimates before, and this needs to stop. And again, the number of piles for the proposed conditions, again, the number was 152. I have no idea what was that. So we need explanations, full explanations on the construction cost estimate.
Is that it?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
Item number 1720-15BZ, 461 Avenue X, Brooklyn.
Okay, nothing was submitted on this, and the case has been lingering in hearings for a year with 2 postponements and 2 prior adjournments. The applicant must attend the hearing. At the last hearing, applicant said it would submit and didn't, and we were also waiting for CRD1 and CCD1. We're not making much progress on this application, and it's borderline time to finish.
Item number 1825-15BZ, 71 Lewis Avenue, Brooklyn.
And nothing was submitted on this, and this will be the 4th adjournment since the first hearing, the first and only hearing, which was in February of 2017. At that last hearing, at the last hearing, we said no further adjournments, and the applicant must appear. And this is turning out to be an administrative adjournment. So council, so just as a note.
Yep.
Our council
Yes.
must send a letter to the applicant and owner that the case will be dismissed for failure to prosecute.
If
If they don't, so this was, let's see, at the last hearing, we said no more adjournments after the 227 hearing, and now this is an administrative adjournment. So I think we just need to send an applicant a letter saying it's going to be dismissed.
So they have to appear at the next hearing or it will be dismissed?
Yeah. At this hearing. They have to appear at this hearing.
So what's the letter?
The letter, they have to appear at this hearing, or it'll be, or we're going to send out a letter to the owners telling them that it's going to be dismissed, I think, no? We said it was, at the last hearing, we said there were no further adjournments, an applicant must appear, and we said, and now this is an administrative adjournment, so they didn't do what we said at the last
So
hearing.
shouldn't it just be dismissed tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we could just dismiss it tomorrow, yeah. I'm trying to be.
I understand, but we specifically said, Carlo asked at last hearing, should a letter be sent out? And then Chair Perlmutter, you said they were sitting right here in the audience, they
okay.
were. And then you gave them a hearing date for May
Okay.
1st, and they didn't submit anything, so I don't see what a letter.
Okay.
I don't think it makes sense to ask them to show up again. If they showed up before and they made no submission,
Yeah, what's the
what is the
unknown
point? Yeah.
thing? Oh, I cannot show up? Oh, okay.
Item number 1989-15BZ, 92 Walworth Street, Brooklyn.
With respect to the uniqueness study, the statement of fact says that there are 10 other lots in the study area that are 25 by 100. It states that 5 are occupied by conforming uses and are therefore, quote, better off than the vacant lots. I'd like to know why they're better off. What's the size of those commercial buildings? Because this one could have a 1-story commercial building. If they're better off with a 1-story commercial building, how is that better off? That it's built already? I mean, I don't really understand that. The as-of-right drawing was amended to a 1-story without cellar, full lot coverage building. The applicant states that the as-of-right financial analysis in the initial submission was for this plan configuration, and not for the as-of-right with rear yard and mezzanine, which goes to this whole discussion about these sloppy cost estimates. The cost estimates have to be related to the building that the cost estimator is looking at, a set of drawings. Can't make a mistake. That doesn't make any sense, frankly. With respect to the proposed drawings, the zoning calculation sheet is applying our district regulations to the project. It needs to be clear that this is an M11 district and the project is not complying with respect to the various bulk and use provisions in the M11, and then state what is being provided for which BSA waivers are being sought. The BSA zoning calculation sheet, so that's the calculations on the drawings themselves. The BSA zoning calculation sheet also needs to show that this is an M11 and show all the areas of noncompliance under Article 4. If an R6A is the model for the proposed use, then a second sheet that applies Article 2 regulations should be created. And then I'd ask, why isn't the project in compliance with the R6A regs? According to that zoning sheet, the answers are always no to compliance, which I don't think is accurate. The sheets, I admit, are very confusing, but the answers make no sense. The floor-to-floor heights, the bulkhead height and overall building height was, floor-to-floor heights, bulkhead height, and overall building height were reduced. I think there's an error actually on the string dimension in the section. If grade is at 22.88 and the roof is at 66.38, the height above grade / base plane and not the first floor, which is what's shown on the string dimension, is 43.5. So that's, I think, just an error in where the lines are drawn. With respect to neighborhood character, residential use is really not typical of this area, but the narrowness of the lot really doesn't lend itself to commercial use. The best use from a character perspective is merging with the adjoining proposed institutional use adjacent, which, by the way, needs a waiver from the BSA if it's to be developed as a school. The area study indicates that the 3 adjacent lots are being developed as a conforming school, but there's no indication of this at the Buildings Department website, which shows the uses as warehouse, and no applications for a new building or BSA submission. Also, adjacent lot 14, which is shown on the list as a house of worship, is indicated on BIS as a warehouse, and there's no other data in the record to show it is being used as a house of worship. So we really need more to support the claims of adjacent existing non-commercial uses. Otherwise, the land use map tells you one thing, and then the statement tells you a different set of criteria. I'm still having a lot of trouble, though, more than all of that stuff, with the height of this building in relation to the one-story neighbors that are on all sides. I didn't find anything new in the character study, statement of facts, or EAS to support this height. The statement of facts or the EAS refers to 3-story buildings in the area. So how'd we get a 4-story building? Plus, this is a 4-story where there's a cellar that's lifted up so that you get clear story windows. So it's more than a 4-story building. It's really 4.5 stories in terms of height. So really, it towers over the neighbors, and I just don't see how that works with neighborhood character, unless somebody explains it to us. We do have hazmat, air quality, and noise sign-off from DEP and LPC archaeological sign-off.
I had a couple of financial questions in the previous hearing, and actually my financial issues were addressed here. They clarified that the construction costs that they included were actually for the single-story full lot coverage warehouse, so there was no change there. And they assigned income for the entire cellar space, which was an additional 925 square feet, and that increased the gross income to 199,200, and that in turn increased the net operating income to 117,200 instead of the previous 191,400 and 111,400 respectively, and that led to slightly higher return on the project, but really nothing that would change the bottom line. It's now somewhere, it's hovering around 6.1%.
Any other comment?
Item number 20, 196-15BZ, 250 Mercer Street, AKA 683 Broadway, Manhattan.
The fire department submitted a letter on April 19th advising that the fire alarm system must be reviewed by fire department prior to installation. And I just want to let everyone who's here know anyway, that we now have in place a system where DOB and fire department will review pre-BSA approvals for fire alarm systems once the application has come to hearing. So once it's in hearing and we've reviewed it, we can decide to issue a letter to fire department and DOB that a permit to allow the installation of fire alarm should be granted. And that's the only comments I had. Anybody else on this?
Item number 21, 2016, 4153BZ, 4701 19th Avenue, Brooklyn.
They requested an adjournment.
Item number 22, 2016-4217BZ, 1665 Bartow Avenue, The Bronx.
They request an adjournment, and I just wanted to note that fire department issued a letter on April 24th recommending denial of the application because there are two significant violations that are outstanding that must be addressed by this applicant. Okay.
New cases. Item number 1, 268-14BZ, 23106 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
They need to postpone the hearing.
Item number 2, 2017-9BZ, 561 through 565 Utica Avenue, Brooklyn.
We have proof of service of initial hearing to officials and of notice of initial submission to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board 17 recommends denial, with 19 to deny, 6 to approve, and 1 abstention. The resolution doesn't explain the reasoning behind the denial, so I'd like to hear that from the applicant. And maybe we can reach out to the community board and see if we can find out more. That's Rory's case, so maybe we could let
I'll get
Rory
in touch
know.
with Rory,
Okay. We have 2 letters in support and 1 letter in opposition citing dangerous neighborhood conditions. Really dangerous neighborhood conditions. I'm not sure what that's coming from. With respect to the 7319 findings, the alternate site survey only considers sites that are for sale, while this one's a rental. And so that's not a comparable site survey. And really, this is supposed to be done working with real estate agents. So did the applicant work with real estate agents to locate the site? And what sites were shown to them, and why were they rejected? There needs to be much more substance in determining that this is the only site. I also need more on the potential impact that the school use will have on neighboring businesses. And what's the proposal for stroller storage here? They cannot be left on the street. And we've seen another daycare center where they just had a stack of 100 strollers on the sidewalk, and that's not acceptable. They need an inside storage. And also perishable trash storage, where does that go prior to pickup? And is the space proposed to be sprinklered? I hope so. It's for very small children, and will it have fire alarms? And so that's something I'd like fire department to comment on. We do have March 20th DEP comments on air quality and noise, and March 28th comments on hazmats requiring a phase 2 work plan and a HASP. And a phase 2 work plan was submitted on April 2nd, so it's under review, obviously. We have Department of Health preliminary sign-off for a daycare center. Those were my comments.
Shouldn't they have to show that they actually meet the definition, the 1210 definition of a
yes,
school?
yes.
Because currently they're really a daycare center.
Right.
They anticipate that they're going to qualify for universal pre-K, but they don't really go into any other detail than that. But
okay.
they do go into how they're complying with Article 47 of the Health Code, as it regards daycare centers and not schools.
No, so a school has several definition, and the C definition is a child care service operating under a permit issued pursuant to section 47.03 of the New York City Health Code. So as
okay.
long as they qualify for that permit, which I think is what the DOH preliminary approval letter was about, and then they say that they operate a lot of other health, operates 14 other centers in Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn.
Oh,
So,
it's interesting, because previously we've always required them to talk about how they're a school, and usually they then talk about how they're part of Universal Pre-K, which is a DOE-sponsored
oh, I see.
school,
Okay.
and that's what's enabled them to take part of this special permit.
Okay, so I can't speak for the DOE-sponsored school part of it, but as long as they meet the definition C, they qualify as a 1210 school, so they need to establish that they are that permit, that they will operate under a permit issued pursuant to 4703 of the New York City Health Code. Maybe the way that it was described in other cases was they had UPK in association with a school. Could it be that?
No, it's
No,
usually
these
they
were-
said we have UPK in association with the daycare center, which actually kicked them over the threshold. That's why I'm like,
Oh, I
was
see.
there a change in the definition or something? Because usually we've been like, well, you're just a daycare. You're not, and we've actually used that, I believe, to turn down applications that were just
Oh.
daycares, my recollection, and not schools.
Oh,
So that's what
yeah,
I
okay.
could be misremembering it,
Okay.
but.
But probably because they are qualifying for UPK, they would fit under some kind of DOE.
Right, if they do, but they're saying they
DOE.
anticipate it, but that's all they say about it.
Right, okay. So maybe what we need them to do is explain what that preliminary DOH approval means, because that's from what's called the Bureau of Child Care Services. And then the other part is to explain about their other centers, maybe to produce those permits for their other centers, then we could see what their standard method of operation is. That would probably be the most direct.
And then I had questions
Okay.
Also about noise protection for the neighborhood, because there is an outdoor play area in the back, so will there be noise attenuating screens that will protect the residents surrounding it? Because there are residents behind it from the excessive noise of children screaming and playing outdoors. And as to the arrival and departure, how will the children who are arriving and departing from school bus be monitored? They should, I assume they're going to be monitored because they're all under 5, but they still should provide the detail in the narrative.
I must have missed the air quality report. Is that a new submission?
DEP comments on air quality and noise. So I don't think we have sign off on that,
Okay.
right? So air quality comment was, please note that if the proposed building is vacant for 2 years or less, then the HVAC assessment is not required. If the building is vacant for more than 2 years, HVAC assessment should be conducted on the closest building of comparable height.
Well, I noticed there's a lot of, it seems like, I'm not sure if the building up the block is an auto repair shop, but it seems pretty close to it. I'm worried about the air quality for the students in the school.
That's why I sent it to DEP, and they didn't make any comments on that.
Is that a repair facility? Yeah.
Right next door, check.
I think there's an AutoZone on one side, and I think the other side is actually like a body shop. I know we've had previous cases where
Yeah.
that is an issue for children.
So, no, you're right. So maybe a specific note to DEP that there is in fact an auto body and a,
Well, the auto zone, I believe, is just
It's a retail.
it's a retail, but the auto, I believe, and again, this is just from Google Images and from the photographs, I believe that one of the sites right next door is an auto repair shop, which would make sense with the area, because it seems like it's a heavily auto service area. There's a gas station up the block, and I know that this used to have a gas station under it, or tanks under it.
right.
I just want to get a little more
So
clarity.
usually it's, the auto repair shop is only matters if they've got a spray booth and they're handling,
Right, and
Right.
I just don't know what it is.
right, okay.
And DEP did ask them to do noise testing.
They did ask them to do noise
For-
testing.
For regarding the playground.
Okay.
Forgot the exact wording.
Okay. It's, this one maybe? Yeah, they specifically asked for that noise.
So they
Yeah.
said,
Okay.
okay. Item number 3, 2017-291BZ, 1367 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
I'm wondering if, I know that they're different owners, but the conversation is the same and the buildings are attached.
Okay, so
Is there a way that we can discuss this together? Because not discussing it together is very difficult, because we'll end up having to repeat the exact same conversation.
Okay.
So it's an attached building, I understand there are two owners. But the problem is, I will literally have to just say all the same words in the second hearing as in the first, because they're attached to each other.
Well, tomorrow's discussion, though, will still have to be one and then the other, or are you?
No, but that's, well, so you'll hear the comments. I'll give the comments because it's impossible to talk about them without talking about them together. So what's very interesting is on this application, the applicant for this house and the applicant for the next house, which I should just name, so that it's clear.
1363.
Yeah, so 1363 East 26, which is calendar number 2017-292BZ. They're attached, they're a semi-detached house, and they're applying together, and their proposal is to do the exact same thing to each house. So that way, we can look at the totality of the building, because the massing of the building, which is always a problem with these semi-detached houses, is the massing is really affected if you only have one building enlarging and the other side doesn't, and it affects the determination entirely. So if one building is enlarging all by itself, we've had cases where the scale of the enlargement is really, really reduced because we can't work with the roof line of the adjoining property owner. In this case, the property owners are working together, and the proposal is to modify the roof line together and to create an entire new roof line and an entire new floor together.
Okay, so why don't we call the next one? So we
Okay.
They're both put together.
Item number 4, 2017-292BZ, 1363 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. So, the resolutions will just be duplicate resolutions, essentially, because we're going to say exactly the same. So we do have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors for both of those applications. Community Board 14 recommends approval. We have 2 letters in support. I already discussed that cleverly the property owners got together about this, which is a good thing.
Sorry, one question that Carlo just brought up. What if we're in a situation where 1367 decides to go forward with the enlargement, but 1363 is?
That's what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
Great.
that. Okay. So to best understand the impact that the drawing, to best understand the impact of the proposal on each building, the drawings need to include the house next door in its totality. The drawings need to be about the total house, right? So not just half. We can't really look at it at half. And it needs to include an axonometric and a drawing/rendering of the proposal in context with its neighbors, especially since 3 sets of houses are another set, are sets of semi-detached houses on either side of this. So how this typology is modified by this proposal is really relevant to what it does to neighborhood character, right? We have many samples of these kinds of renderings in case the architect is not familiar with them. And so that needs to be done. I'd also like to understand, as Carlo and L'Oreal just pointed out, whether both owners intend to make the improvements at the same time. It'd obviously be much cheaper. You know, you get the contractor in, tears off the roof all at once, pulls down the back. You know, it's very obvious that it should be one contractor. It'd be a much cheaper project and probably a much less complicated project to do if it's all done at once. So we need some kind of assurance from both property owners that they're going to be doing the work together, using, you know, essentially using one construction crew. And obviously, an approval for one side with no intention to build anytime soon would produce even more absurd results than we've already seen in this neighborhood, where such additions to a semi-detached house get built and they should never have been built because it looks ridiculous and terrible. And we struggled with another semi-detached house where we really manipulated the roof line a lot so that it would sort of join up with the existing roof line. Which would have to be the case if they weren't going to really work in tandem in construction. And we could make this a condition of approval that they have to be done together.
Or they have one resolution.
Or they have one okay, I don't know if that's allowed when you have 2 property owners, that there's one
Is it one
resolution.
zoning?
No,
As long as it's 2.
it's 2 zoning lots.
I'm just worried about conditioning someone else's property rights on someone else. Whereas if they're presenting the entire thing together,
Well,
they're coming in as a team.
A restrictive declaration, no work, no permit, unless both of them file a permit at the same time. Something like that. Otherwise, it's a misrepresentation of what's going to be happening, right? I don't want to have that start a whole new phenomenon of people pretending and then they're not doing it. And, you know, we'll sell it with those drawings. It'll make the sale more valuable. With respect to the threshold question of removal of existing walls and joists and retaining 50% of these on the exterior of the building, they need to provide the calculations. We didn't get that at all. I do appreciate very much, though, that there's no proposal here for a 2nd-story encroachment at the rear yard. This is a big house at slightly over 1 FAR, and they're only encroaching on the 1st floor into the rear yard. I think the lateral and longitudinal section indicators on the plan are incorrect. It looks like they're taken through the playroom on the attic level rather than the dormer. And then there's these void spaces in the dormer that aren't explained, so I'd like to understand that because the roof line looks tall. And it says that there's a flat roof for an 8-foot-high ceiling playroom. So if there's a flat roof, then why is the roof 10'9" high? I don't know why you need such a high roof above an 8-foot ceiling. So they need to explain to that. And the section seems to indicate something else is going on with the roof line, and at the same time, there's nothing in the plan to indicate something's going on in the roof line. Is there a parapet wall? I mean, I don't think you need one in this case. I actually don't know what's happening, and they need to explain that better. So they need to provide clearer sections, move the section indicator to the right place, explain what's going on in those voids, and then the what do you call it, the perspective drawing, the rendering, to show the context of the building and the neighborhood. Any other comments? No?
This concludes the public review session for May 1st, 2018.
1990.
She said